So, apparently continuing on our run of season 9, should be season 9, episode 3, Midnight Towboy. Um, yeah, I'm actually amazed it seems to we've hit a run. Like the beginning of this season 19 seems to be quite good for episodes. Because I can't really find any faults with this one. Homer ends up having to go out late at night to try and find milk for Maggie because she's being quite clingy and she ends up making Marge drop the one sort of bottle of milk they had. And because of this, Homer ends up sort of going to the Quickie Mart and finding nothing, and he goes to Ogdenville, which apparently has no milk, and the Shelbyville, and I think they do the third one's the sight gag they do, which is quite funny, where it's spelling out the word milk, but it's actually Mr. T is the Lion King, which is very, very ridiculous. Looks a bit less like the Lion King and more like the Cowardly Lion from Wizard of Oz, but okay. Unless he ends up in a place called Guidopolis. Now, my knowledge with this was the race. It's a sort of New Jersey stereotype. It's the Jersey Shore. That was like the sort of descriptor of most of the cast, I think. So you get these very sort of, I guess, New Jersey sort of kind of humor, sort of references to that culture, I guess, in a way. I don't know. It's like I kind of got that was the point, and that's one of the issues you have with that sort of thing where. You're making a cultural reference that people maybe won't get. It's the same like with Monty Python in America. I'm sure there are cultural references in America, cultural references here in England, that when they were shown on TV in America for Monty Python, it didn't really make sense. Yeah, that's always going to happen because you take on the culture where you're based. So. And basically, Homer ends up parking illegally, ends up getting his car towed, and ends up meeting the guy. But he ends up talking to the guy who is towing it. And there's actually a great sort of gag where he goes to get like the registration from his car, and when he sits in the car presses back down and the truck lifts up, showing just sort of how worryingly heavy Homer is, which I think is a great quick joke, and then it just moves on. And so Homer ends up buying this truck, and it's another one of those episodes where Homer sort of it's a weird thing because like they don't ever say like he quits his job. It's just like he's just doing that. Though it seems to be a full time thing, so it's a bit strange. There's no reference to that, but I guess it doesn't matter. And so he does that, and he takes on this new job. But as usual, whenever Homer takes on a new job, like in Guess Who's Coming to Criticize Dinner, he begins to make enemies, and so the enemies, which are his friends. End up sort of tricking him and end up getting him essentially kidnapped by the same truck driver because they're very territorial, such as the idea, and so he warned him never to come and take his turf. The weird thing is, though, to me, and this is probably just it's much the continuity issue, but that it took Homer a long time to end up in Guidopolis, which is what the place is called, but he believes for some reason that is still then Springfield when they trick him, which is it's a weird moment because like he shouldn't be there. It's almost like Homer drives directly from Springfield to this next place, Guidopolis, but he doesn't recognise the fact that he should have actually been travelling for a long time because the city limits of Springfield seem to be quite large. Actually, if you watch some of the other episodes, and so he ends up being sort of kidnapped and sort of has to phone home, pretend that he's fine, that he's going to, just going to be there forever. But during the B plot, basically Marge has been trying to sort of get Maggie to be less clingy and become more actualized, as the phrase used, which I really hate as a phrase. It's just it sounds so pretentious to me. I'm sure it is an actual phrase, but still. And so Maggie becomes much more of a sort of independent person. That seems kind of funny because Maggie is very independent as a character anyway, when you consider some of the other episodes, where I think they've shown her change her own diaper. Obviously, she protected Homer from Fat Tony at one point. She saved Homer from drowning in another episode. There's a lot of those moments where it kind of shows that Maggie is far more able than she should be, and it's always quite clever. I always quite enjoy that joke. I always enjoy that bit. And so you have that situation happen, and so Maggie goes out on this very sort of slight. It's a satire of westerns in a way because she ends up riding on Santa's little helper, and I just did that thing. I shouldn't put my feet up on this stool on this poof because on this thing because So if I move, it makes that fart noise, which isn't good. And so you get her riding out, and Santa's will help her, and ending up in Gruderopolis, and ending up finding Homer. And, that's pretty fine. It seems kind of strange to have that, hit that moment in a way, because you didn't need to have this whole thing of Maggie going out to do something by herself because of the B plot. Like, Maggie, to me, would have done that anyway, because it's just kind of what Maggie does. Maggie cares a lot for Marge, and cares a lot for Homer as well, and so I don't see the need for the B plot. Also, the B plot has this really, really bizarre, like, the beginning of it's fine, like, this is quite funny, Marge attacks the woman who's trying to help her, like, disses herself from Maggie, she knees her in the crotch. It's just like, okay, a little much maybe, but still. It's a great moment. But then there's this really, gets really dark for some reason. And she picks up this like bag of potatoes and is holding it like she was Maggie, and she starts crying. And it's this really weird moment where you're like, what even the hell? Like, what is the point? What is the reasoning behind showing like Marge breaking down because she cannot look after, she, can't be with her child in that way? It's like the only thing that's stopping her from doing that is herself. She could still play with Maggie and still interact with her. It doesn't mean that she has to distance herself from doing every single thing. It's just a really awkwardly dark moment. There's no need for it. There's not much to complain. There's not, much other than that sort of stuff to complain about. The jokes are pretty good. There's one that I question a little if it's slightly homophobic. I don't know. I can't remember. It's this bizarre thing of like when Homer's buying the truck, his tow truck, the guy tells him not like to always have the hook on the back of it pointing a certain way, which is to point out, like out towards the cars. And when he says like, oh well, why? What happens if you turn it around? And he does. This group of pretty stereotypically voiced gay guys like suddenly pulls up and kind of starts hitting on him, and then he's like really sort of embarrassed and he quickly turns it back around and they drive off. I don't know if that's technically homophobic, which I guess to Homer it is in a way because he's scared of other gay guys believing himself to be gay, which is a little weird because I've talked about this in a previous episode. I talked about the homophobia episode. He's been through that. He doesn't consider that a terrible thing. And actually, I forgot to mention this in the Homer of Seville episode, which is another one I did during this batch, which is why it's in my head. It's actually just the previous episode. I literally have watched like 3 episodes in a row and recorded these in a row. Homer has this moment where he's flirting with these women, and Marge tells him not to flirt with women anymore, female fans. And so this guy comes over and he starts flirting with him. He just then sort of like says, like, oh, well, that's how guys talk. But it's this weird moment where it's that same thing I talked about during Homer of Seville, and I might talk about it in the other episode as well. It's this very making the characters be something at that point. It's just having the character be as they are at the time for no other reason than to be that. And I guess that doesn't really. I don't know. I just feel like that joke could have been handled better. Like Homer could have had that moment where he's sort of like flattered and maybe got annoyed with them. Like it didn't have to be a situation of like Homer is embarrassed or in that way sort of like homophobic in a way. It could have just been they could have made a joke of like him getting consistently sort of hit upon by guys for this choice. And thus he finally just does it, and then just like, oh, sports button, they go away. That seems to be funnier. But it's sort of like Homer trying to be very empathetic, trying to be sort of, not caring about what maybe sort of other people think, but actually just kind of just getting annoyed with it instead of it being a moment where he's embarrassed by it. I don't know. It's just, to me, that's how I feel about that situation. I don't quite know what it is about it strikes me that way, and it's just, I don't know. I don't know you people at home who are watching this video, whoever you are. I know people do watch these videos, so crap about that. But it seems it seems a weird joke and a weird choice. Whereas they could have made a bigger joke. They made a sort of a bigger joke about Homer being just more compassionate, understanding, and trying to be friendly and nice without the issue. I don't know. Other than that, I really can't think of something much that was that wrong with this episode. The editing was fine. There wasn't any ADR issues like we've had with other bits during this batch. No. I've got to say this episode pretty good overall. It didn't really have any real issues. I no, there was yeah. I still question the idea of the B plot. That's the only real issue with it. Like the B plot with Marge and Maggie. I felt it could have been done better, and it could have been more. It didn't quite have to be that idea that Marge was distancing herself entirely from Maggie because she felt like she was doing more harm than good. I really didn't feel like that was maybe as necessary. I don't know. But other than that, it's the only thing I can really think of causing a problem because you want the episode to be good all around. You want this thing, and this is a staple of The Simpsons of Homer switching a job and then getting into a problem. It has been done a lot. There have been a ridiculous amount. Like if I began to flash them up on screen, I imagine it would keep going for a while, and that would be just the ones I could legitimately remember instead of trying to look it up because I know Homer has had 200 different jobs over the last sort of 23 seasons or so. I guess that the other episodes had more to talk about and a bit more to break down. This didn't really. This just it existed, and I'm literally now probably just sort of cycling around the same sentences again over and over again. I'm trying to think if there was anything more to talk about, but really does not. I actually think this is a pretty good episode, and the fact that it's in season 19 kind of puts a dent in that theory I had where the quality of The Simpsons kind of slipped once we hit season 16. Because I remember watching some episodes of season 16, which I have on DVD, and I began to notice the issues that I spotted in later episodes with things like where the A and B plot didn't really connect up, or where they'd have an opening that didn't connect really to the rest of the episode. Whereas in this episode, not only did the opening connect up to the rest of the A plot, but the opening connected down up to the rest of the B plot as well. I've got to admit, actually, if I was going to point to a Simpsons episode, a later Simpsons episode, and say, this is how it should be done, I'd point to this episode. That would be it. That's literally, I think, what you can take away from this episode. That this is... It's not like the old Simpsons. It's not like the classic sort of Simpsons, where there was a very sort of the classic Simpsons was very grounded and felt more like it should be a drama in a way. It felt like you could have changed the animation to live action and the message and all the things would have carried over very well. Whereas this is, you couldn't do it without it being something real world, but using a lot of cartoonish elements, which is the thing of it. So yeah, that's it. I am going to got a few more of these to record, so I will see how many more I can get through before people get back and I can't sit in the lounge and do this for the rest of the afternoon. And I'll see you next time.